The base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It is a Wednesday. It is Champions League Wednesday with games going on in Europe. Games going on in CONCACAF. We'll talk about the ones from last night with MLS having a very good night at the office. Two wins at home. We'll get into games coming up today. Manchester City hosting Sporting. They should be fine. The big one is at 3:00. Real Madrid hosting PSG. Lots of intrigue there. We've got Europa League as well today. Libertadores qualification rounds continue. Sudamericana preliminary rounds continue. We have the epic battle in Ecuador between Mushuk Runa and Liga de Quito. My beloved Mushuk Runa, sponsored by like a grocery store chain, if I remember correctly. But CONCACAF is going to get a lot of talk here as well. However, the NWSL makes a big announcement this morning. I had actually forgotten that they didn't have a commissioner because it had been a while and there's been so many different things going on in the NWSL. They now have a new commissioner.
Jessica Berman is the new commissioner after spending the last 2+ years as deputy commissioner and executive vice president of business affairs at the National Lacrosse League. Before that, it was a dozen years in various roles in the National Hockey League. Bill Daly, the deputy commissioner, at a very early time in her tenure there, knew that she was someone that they needed to hang on to, and they let her grow there in the National Hockey League. So she goes from the NHL to the NLL to the NWSL. Jessica Berman is your new commissioner.
Okay. You knew her from the National Lacrosse League. Is there any highlights there to share that would be applicable here potentially?
Well, the National Lacrosse League specifically has had a mandate to grow as a league when it comes to franchises and their depth of the footprint in the United States and in Canada. So she was in a league that was looking for a growth spurt, and she was part and parcel of that. They've added franchises in Southern California. They've added some in some non-traditional markets. And so I think that when you look at what the National Lacrosse League was doing and trying to expand their product and place it in either a non-traditional market or in a growth market, I think that those kinds of experiences and understanding where you can fit, I think can lead to similar things in looking at possible markets and expansion and the growth of the NWSL as well.
Yeah, that's an area where the NWSL is in right now. I would be really intrigued to be a fly on the wall in some of the conversations about the next steps. You know, there's been a lot of issues to resolve initially, and I wonder if kind of after the first flurry of growth after the 2019 World Cup, I mean, it's been a lot. There's been issues internally that they've had to fix. There has been a global pandemic. There's been the rise of leagues in other parts of the world as well. I would wonder if expansion has maybe slowed down because of a combination of those things. It's going to be impossible to pinpoint it, whether people are getting cold feet because of some of the leadership changes. They want to get things settled. Some of the other issues off the field. You know, you had you had labor disputes as well at one point. You just had the effects business-wise of COVID. Has expansion been more difficult because of that? And does Berman come in with a little bit of a mandate to get back to where the league felt like it was going into 2020? Because, I mean, if you go back not that long ago, it felt like coming off of the World Cup, the league was heading in a very good place. You had Angel City announced, I think, by that point. Just a lot of buzz, just a lot of excitement, sponsors jumping on board, all kinds of things going on in a positive sense. Even the initial phases of the pandemic and getting back on the field for the Challenge Cup and the deal with CBS and Paramount, lots of really big things happening. And since then, it's been a real struggle. I would assume that Berman is now coming in with a lot of those struggles at least put to the back burner and or resolved. I don't think everything completely is. There's still some outstanding questions around the league, and a lot of this is the off the field side of things. But I would assume that her mandate is to come in and get back to that growth mode that the league seemingly was in. I don't know what the magic number is for NWSL, if it's 16 teams, if it's 18 teams, if it's getting past 20. I don't know where that stands, but there does have to be some forward progress after Angel City and San Diego coming in this year. There's been talk about the Bay Area. Okay, that feels like more of a 24 thing. That's fine. Where else? There's still a lot of parts of the country that are underserved. And when you look below the NWSL, that's where the growth has been on the women's side with what the USL has announced with W League initially, and in turning into their Super League, which will be a professional women's league at the second division level. As I've said in general, like I think the tags that U.S. Soccer will put on you, D1, D2, D3, any of that, it's not really all that important. And I think on the women's side, it's maybe even less important if, in markets where they have a USL professional women's team in 23 and it's very successful, there's no reason why they can't be as successful as an NWSL team. I think there's even more potential for that. So it's an interesting time for the NWSL. I think there is a lot of maybe piano off the back to a degree here. And now we can grow. Now we can move. You have the leader to do it. Experience in growing a league with the NLL. These things are great. But now it's time for that progress to get back to where it was, and that promise getting back to where it was going into 2020.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing these next steps, with all of the buzz that was attached to the NWSL with announcing San Diego and announcing Angel City. And, that's great. And the key here is, yes, growth needs to occur, but it has to be sound. It can't just be sitting there and it's like having a scattershot approach. It's like, okay, we need to expand to X and it needs to be right now. I think that you've got to be sound in your growth coming out of the pandemic and announcing these two key franchises and all of the buzz that's attached.
Well, hold on. These franchises, Angel City was before the pandemic in terms of being announced.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes, it was.
So, I mean, that's the important thing here. And I think I want to be clear on what I'm saying about it, because I think you're missing me. It's not about these two new teams coming in this year. It's about everything since the Challenge Cup, the first one, where, okay, it's like, wow, they've handled this really well and everything's going to be okay. You've had a commissioner have to leave. You've had a lot of questions about governance. You've had a lot of questions about players leaving. You don't have the U.S. soccer funding anymore. To say that it's about getting the right owners in, yeah, of course. But if they don't expand, there's a perception issue here. And there has to be. And we all want the NWSL to succeed, but there was also talk that they weren't going to survive the issues off the field either. So I don't think I disagree that it's a slow process of getting just the right people in and, take your time and do these things. They have to show growth in different ways, because now you're at a risk of losing your stars more than you ever were, because there's no reason for them to stay outside of, they want to, and they're getting paid well. There's no issue with U.S. soccer anymore about, we want these players. If we're going to pay you, you have to play in the NWSL. None of that's there anymore. So if Real Madrid or Barcelona or Chelsea or Arsenal or whoever put a better contract in front of you, you can go. So you lose those stars. What are you selling the league on? I don't think it's good enough to come in and take your time and get things right. You have to do that in any job, but you got to do that at a faster pace with the NWSL, in my opinion, because there's more competition now than there was before the pandemic and before these problems started.
But what I don't want in turn is knowing that you have ground to make up, to re-solidify yourself on the global stage, to sit there and make sure that you're not losing these players. I just don't want growth for the sake of growth and then it be thin across the top. And
what do you mean thin across the top? What does that mean?
Where you end up with instability if you're trying to get into markets. And we've seen this in other divisions and in other leagues, where you go into a market, everything's great, at least off the top, but then it turns into a one and done. Things aren't done properly, and
No. It can't be that. Those days are gone. Those days of allowing a one and done. No, that's not happening at this level. Let's put that to the side. This isn't 2005 USL. Sorry, USL, but that's why a lot of things happened the way that they did. It's not that. That's not those days anymore. But you also can't sit back and then watch the USL Second Division League add franchises and add franchises. You can't do that either. That's what makes this a tough job, because I really do think there has to be a mandate for progress and quickly, or you're going to get passed. You're going to get lapped. You're going to have difficulties. Of course, you're not going to do a one and done. You're not going to allow anybody in the league without the funding to have at least a certain minimum. I would assume you're talking 3 to 5 years as a minimum term, and you're not coming in if you're not approved for that. You got to remember too, John, this isn't the old days where you didn't have those standards of what a Division I, what a Division II were. That's part of the fallout of those issues with USL. You have a minimum net worth amount that is here. You have, letters of credit that fund a team in case of catastrophe, not just bad business. You have a lot more protection for that. So no, you're not looking for one and done. So let's throw that to the side. But you also can't be so picky that you don't add teams. You just can't. You have to, because how many teams are we talking about right now?
What?
That's the thing, is we don't even know.
Yeah.
That's the problem of where the NWSL is from a perception standpoint. We don't have a grip right now coming into a season. And, it's hard. Look, there's a bunch of things going on right now. Obviously, if you work for a team, you're dug into that. I know MLS really well because that's where I work in. But NWSL, it's not easy for a casual fan to know where the stars are now, because they've all moved, it feels like, going into this upcoming season.
Yeah, it was chaotic with all of the transfers, players from
North Carolina. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. It's hard to know what the season format is with the Challenge Cup and then the league. And is the Challenge Cup, how serious of a trophy is that? Is that a preseason tournament? Is it a league cup? Like, what is it? Like, there's so many of these little things from a perception standpoint that I've always felt like this league has to function as a high quality soccer league. It has nothing to do with the gender. It doesn't matter. They have to do the things that good leagues do. And you've got to have stability and growth, both. It can't be one or the other. You've got to have both. You've got to always be moving forward. And they're not in any way to be settled. They're not like, okay, we're not going to add any teams because we have enough. No, you don't. And you need some good PR. You need some good news. You need some new people into the league. The questions come up many times. I've been asked about Atlanta and what's next for Atlanta and NWSL. We'll flash back to March of 2020 before we went to Mexico City and everything fell apart. It wasn't our fault. Trust us. The first home game of the 2020 MLS season, and Mike and I had Arthur Blank on in pregame, and we did not ask him about NWSL. He brought it up about looking at NWSL and exploring the possibilities of adding professional women's soccer in Atlanta. Now, then the pandemic hit less than a week later. It didn't hit, but it shut down MLS. It hit his business straight up. I would assume that has slowed down that looking. I would assume that has slowed down that process. There's logistics, there's infrastructure, there's a lot of things that have to go into adding an NWSL team to the portfolio. You're going to need space to train. You have fields, but you're going to need locker rooms, offices, all that kind of stuff. The training ground is bursting at the seams. You don't have enough to add a women's team. You're not just going to add one women's team. You're going to add an academy on the women's side. That's more space. That's more infrastructure. There's a lot of things. I know people have asked about and I think this was earlier in 2020, maybe late 2019, where there was an option placed on land near the training ground. I would assume that's still in place. Again, pandemic, everything gets slowed down. Could that be part of that conversation? Possibly. I don't know the details of the land. I don't know what kind of prep you're going to have to do, how fast you can activate it. I don't know any of that. But I would also think that with all of the instability inside the NWSL coming out of the pandemic, that hasn't exactly accelerated the process of exploring adding a team. And I would assume that Atlanta is not the only major market that they would like to add, and that they have had conversations with pre-pandemic that maybe are not at the same pace of those conversations right now. They have a lot of opportunity here with more facilities than ever before, more investment in the sport than ever before, more stadiums to drop into than ever before. So you're playing in first-class facilities now. You're not having to do what some of the other leagues had to do, where you're playing at high school stadiums, you're playing at small college stadiums, you're playing at stadiums that are marked for football all the time, stuff like that. You've got a lot more potential to jump in and have a team be successful and look successful straight out of the gate. But that's got to start happening. Angel City's going to get a lot of attention this year because of the ownership group, because of all the PR side of it. How are they going to be on the field? What is that part going to look like? It's a valid question. We'll see, because ultimately the PR is great. You got to back it up. Got to back it up with substance. You got to have the right soccer product, or that PR fades really fast. San Diego's been quieter, but they've built some pretty good things going on the soccer side. So I feel pretty good about them on the field. Angel City, we'll see. But then what's next? Bay Area is really the only one that has made any noise in the last few months about coming in down the road. That's got to change. When we start talking MLS with your local sports people, how fast, John, generally does the conversation go to expansion? No, it doesn't then. I haven't had that case. That's one of the first things that people start talking about to me. To your sports people, not soccer people.
Yeah, and sports people, it's not a very quick topic, no.
Oh, well, I don't know who you're talking to. When I'm talking to people, they're talking about Charlotte coming into the league. Like, holy crap, they drew 75,000.
I was thinking about teams in addition to
where that comes to. That's what I'm saying. Like, what is all the buzz in MLS?
75,000 in Charlotte.
No, not immediately. I'm talking about over the last few years. Charlotte, Austin, Cincinnati, Atlanta, LAFC. All those teams are since 2017. What is one of the struggles in MLS? Getting New England going with big attendances, with big buzz. Colorado, Chicago's been around since 98. The older teams, we've talked about it, it's hard for them at times because you have a little bit of the PTSD in terms of owners having lost a good bit of money over the years, and fans looking at it in the market. And we're going to talk casual fans here, because perception for a lot of them is a negative perception. It's an old product. It's a bad product. It was in a smaller stadium. It was in a non-major league stadium. You couldn't find the games, whatever. They haven't caught up because they never got connected to it. The new markets are exciting. The new markets are getting the buzz. NWSL has to do that same thing. You have to get the conversation going about who's new, what they're doing, and who's next. Because when you've been talking to people, and again, maybe we're talking to different people, Vegas, when Vegas comes up, people get excited about MLS in Vegas. That's a big deal. That's potentially a very big deal. And then when you get into a conversation, you start going further, like, oh, well, what about 31? What about 32? Well, it could be here. It could be here. It could be there. NWSL has to get that business conversation going. And I hope that they do. I've been frustrated with trying to follow the NWSL a bit. It's gotten better. I think what they've done with CBS and Paramount Plus has been outstanding. They've put more product there that has been great for fans to find, fans to consume. You have to have the content out there for them. If you don't have content, people can't get connected. But now the soccer product has to improve, and the business side of the league has to get back to where it was coming into 2020, where everything looked like it was sunshine and roses. They got to get back there. And some of that is going to be down to expansion, because that is the easy thing to get buzz going, get money in the coffers. That sure doesn't hurt either. I don't know what the expansion fee is going to be. It's not going to be huge. It's going to be something. But getting buzz, because maybe it's hard for a team in an existing market that has struggled, let's say the Houston Dash, let's say the Orlando Pride, how do they get the buzz that they haven't gotten already? That's a tougher road. How does new team in Atlanta in 2025 get that buzz? They open the doors.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have some of that. And then the existing teams have to try to piggyback. And that's something MLS can do better too. So it's coming, I think, and this is a step in the right direction. You get the commissioner back on board. That's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yes.
But you've got to get things moving forward quickly. I don't think it can be come in and right the ship. I think they've righted the ship with all of the work that they've done. Marla Messing as an interim CEO, she's going to continue that through May 31st to help with this transition. Righting the ship was her job. Is it completely righted? It might still be a little wobbly. Okay, it's moving. Going into the 10th season of the league, that's a big deal. So this needs to be a rebirth, and I think Jessica Berman can be a big part of that.
And going back to her time briefly in the National Lacrosse League, when she was there as the number 2, the mandate was to expand basically by 25% over the next couple of seasons. And there were plans once again in other non-traditional markets. So I think that her experience in the National Lacrosse League, understanding a mandate to grow the game in a geographic sense and adding franchises and adding space, I think she understands that going in from her previous stop. And so I think that having that knowledge base will definitely help with what you're looking for here from the NWSL.
Yeah, I'm going to bounce around a little bit on some of the questions since I brought MLS expansion into it. So we'll get into CCL in a little bit. Tranquilo on that, por favor. Burned, I really enjoy watching NWSL games. Likes the style of play. Likes NWSL games more than MLS in general. Says there's so few games on. They're usually at odd times of the day. More teams will help and play the games at times people can watch. This is something where I would love to see some coordination, and I understand it's hard, but I'd love to see some coordination between MLS and NWSL. I don't know if you can go further than that. I don't think it's going to be easy to basically create like blocks and windows where you prioritize MLS games in this window on this day and in NWSL games in this window on this day and that kind of thing. We've talked about an MLS schedule where I'd love to see a Friday night game of the week. I'd love to see a Sunday evening game of the week or late afternoon, figure out a time and a regular time for your other league games. Of course, you'll have a little bit of variety due to stadium conflicts and other things. But in general, I'd like to see like the NFL has, when games are going to be. Now, they've added more windows, but when games are going to be. I'd love to see the NWSL do that as well and find different windows for different things. Do they maybe put the bulk of their games up against the MLS game of the week on Sunday? I don't know. You might have to, but they wouldn't want to have their primetime game of the week at the same time as a whole bunch of MLS games if you can help it. Can you carve out a time to do that where maybe CBS gets on board? If CBS has both, then it becomes a lot easier, right? Mm-hmm. Which we'll see. I'd love to see them maybe think about how they can do that in terms of scheduling. But regular scheduling of games, so important because it's just I find myself falling into it on nights like last night. Well, I knew CONCACAF Champions League was going. I knew that Libertadores was in season. So I knew there were games on last night. I'll find which one I want to watch. Cool. Good. Done. On a Saturday night, generally, I know that there's going to be MLS games, but they might be 7, they might be 7:30, they might be 8. Not all like time zone differences either. Like it's different start times all over the place. Can we normalize some of this stuff? It'll help. But yeah, more games, Burned. Absolutely. I mean, just more games, more teams, all that helps. And I'm not worried. It always comes up when we talk expansion. I haven't been worried about it from an MLS perspective since Seattle came in. I mean, over a decade about you're diluting the talent pool. It's a worldwide talent pool. There's no diluting. It's how much you're going to spend. And the U.S. domestic talent pool is far better than it's ever been. There's players. You don't have to worry about that. On the women's side, I think it's honestly even easier. Are there stars for everybody? That's harder to do. That's going to be more difficult, and they're probably going to have to think about how they don't just rip stars from other teams to throw them to the expansion team, because then you get players who in a 5-year period have played for 4 teams. That's not good. They've done a little bit too much of that. Grow it. Develop new stars. And they're going to have to work at that, and they're really going to have to get CBS on board and help make new stars out of it. But it's the right time, because you're going to have a new generation in the national team. And we know on the women's side, especially, that is going to drive who becomes a star. You're going to have new stars wearing that kit. Then the NWSL has to capitalize. First off, you got to have them in your league. And then you've got to keep them in your league. And you got to make them a star. Trinity Rodman has to be a star going forward. Ashley Sanchez has to be a star going forward. Not a nice player, not a member of the national team pool, a star. Because Megan Rapinoe is not going to play all that much longer. Alex Morgan's over 30. You've got these stars going away. Who are the next stars who are going to move the needle? Men's national team had to deal with this too. It's even harder there because you got players all over the place, all over everywhere. Should be easier on the side. But Trinity Rodman, for me, that should be the face of the team, face of the league, face of women's soccer, all of it going forward. And I hope that happens. But you've got to make new stars. You got to have them. You don't want to manufacture having them everywhere in the league, because, again, then you create instability on rosters. But you got to have stars in as many places in the league as you can from a true strategic roster building situation. If you're a brand new team coming in, let's say Atlanta comes in 25. All right, if Trinity Rodman's established somewhere, you're not going to be able to get her. Of course, you want to make a big splash. Is it getting somebody who's a free agent, going out of contract, making a big transfer, potentially? Is it bringing in somebody from overseas? Absolutely could do that, because, again, you've got more talent out there than you've ever had. So these new teams got to be strategic about that. You got to have star power. Star power is a key, and Atlanta showed you in the MLS side, it doesn't always have to be established star power. Nobody, and don't let people lie to you. Let me not say nobody, because I'm sure there were some, but the 55,000 people at Bobby Dodd for game 1, when Miguel Almiron was announced, there were no more than 5,000 people who knew who he was out of the people who were there. Same for Joseph. Same for most everybody in that team. They became stars because of the way they were promoted. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. You can do that. There's some markets that need more star power than others, but you can make your stars. Sign exciting players. It's gonna be interesting to see. Shooter McGavin says cities like Austin, and it was talking about New England, says you're never going to get big buzz. We have 4 other teams that are big time. People only have so much sports energy. So cities like Austin will get buzz because that's the big dog in town. Shooter, I think there's 2 things that run counter to that in some ways. 2 factors I'll bring up to that conversation, because I agree with you for some markets. I agree with you, especially for teams that have been around a long time, and the MLS team is seen as the little brother of the big 4, big 5 now, which is what they should be talking about, because all your studies you're finding are people are more interested in MLS than the NHL. Nobody wants to really acknowledge that, especially out of the hockey world, but it's a fact. The studies are giving you that, and baseball is hell-bent on falling down that list right now.
Yeah.
But Austin gets the buzz because they're the big dog in town. They get the buzz because they're new. But Atlanta is a prime example. Okay, Atlanta didn't have a hockey team when Atlanta United came in. Okay. College football's a much bigger deal here than it is anywhere else in MLS, I would say. Sorry, Columbus, Ohio. You have 1 team. In Atlanta, you've got overlap between a whole lot of teams that have a whole lot of attention. And Atlanta United found a way. It wasn't magic. It wasn't Darren Eales is a wizard and found a way to make it happen with a magic wand. It was hard work. And you got to continue working. You have to, because there's no market in this country that you just cannot get attention in, no matter what. Just, it's impossible. I don't think there's a market in this country that is an MLS market or an NWSL market that it is purely impossible, and they just should just don't do it. Just don't say the word soccer in the city because it's bad. There's other things going on. It's work. It's harder. Now, I want to be clear in this. It is harder for teams that have lost the perception battle because they came into the league when it had 10 teams, when it had 12 teams, when they almost folded in the early 2000s, when it wasn't a great product, when there wasn't a lot of hype. It's harder for them because you go try to tell somebody, hey, you should pay attention to the Revs right now. They're really good. They had the best season ever in MLS history last year. Well, I remember when they drew 3,000 people, for games. And I remember when they played the same team 5 times in a year. Yeah, I don't really care. That's harder to overcome, but you can. New teams, and that's why I mentioned it. That's why I was talking about expansion, John. New teams, you don't have that track record. You walk in the door. If MLS had come to Atlanta in 96, Atlanta United is not as successful as it is now. If MLS had come to Atlanta in 2011, when it was initially bid for, because there was never the bidding process at the very beginning is a whole different conversation. It's not really the same. There was an expansion bid from Arthur Blank for that cycle, the Portland, Vancouver, Montreal cycle, 2011, 2012. If Atlanta United came in then, it would not have started as big, and it would be a little bit harder road to be where it is now. I'm not completely ruling it out that it wouldn't be, but it would not have been as successful straight out of the gate. The timing helped. The timing hurts some teams in the league. But there's no market anymore in this country that just doesn't pay attention to soccer. And New England is a prime one. Ton of soccer in New England. Ton of people invested. The Revs have to work harder than Atlanta United does to cut through that noise and break that perception.
If your market research, and I mean, I think that Houston's another example of that as an older MLS market that can benefit on the NWSL side if they work hard at it. And if your market research, and this goes into that notion about working hard and working harder, if your market research, regardless of what city we're talking about here, if you do the market research and it has proven to you that you can succeed, then you make the investment in it, off the field, leading into it, on the field, bringing players in, etc., and continue to work at it. Nothing comes easy these days, but if you continue to work hard at something, then your work should show up and your work will show out to the rest of that soccer base in whatever geography we're talking, whatever city you want to throw into the discussion. If your market research shows that you can be a success in the NWSL, then go ahead and dive into it and be a part of the growth of the success of a league, regardless of where you are. I don't think that geography should pin you down anymore as, oh, we're not a soccer market. Well, have you done the research? Does your research mark up to sit there and say that, yes, there is a core audience there, and then you can attract the occasional fan and bring them into the experience?
There's a core audience in every part of the country now.
And then once again, you work off of that number and figure out if it works for you there.
There's a core audience in every part of the country. This is not 2000 or 95 or 90 or 85 or 80, any of that. It's changed. Is it more difficult in some markets? Yes, it is. But it is not like hockey. Hockey doesn't have the youth presence that soccer does nationwide on the men's and the women's side.
And hockey is trying to shoehorn itself into markets where it shouldn't belong, and they're still trying to reinforce the fact, well, we should be here. Phoenix, yes, I'm talking about you.
Well, no, I don't think that's fair either, because that's a business decision. Let me be very clear why I'm saying that's not fair. Because if you're saying that NHL hockey doesn't deserve to be in Phoenix, and they didn't deserve to be in Atlanta either, so we can't play that game because, I mean, you don't have that many people playing hockey in Atlanta. You just don't. You don't. You don't have as many people playing hockey as soccer. That's not hard to follow. It's harder in those situations. Somebody wants to pay for it, do it, fine, whatever. Soccer's different. Like Phoenix should have went away because they should be out of business, and if the league was going to try to help a market, they should have helped a better one in Atlanta in that situation than that. But that's a different conversation. That is not this conversation. We're not going to go down the Atlanta Spirit rabbit hole. What I'm saying is, if you drop a hockey team into Houston, they're going to struggle a whole lot more than a soccer team. Yes?
Yes.
Am I crazy?
No.
Because there's not a whole lot of hockey rinks compared to soccer fields.
No.
You know? So, like, you don't have an issue like you did when pro soccer started here in the late 60s or in the 90s when people didn't want to do it because of the NASL failure, or even in the early 2000s when people questioned it and didn't know if it would survive and all that. You don't have those questions anymore. Every major market in this country, it's for an MLS or an NWSL team, has tens upon thousands or hundreds of thousands of kids in that market playing soccer, boys and girls. They're playing. You got coaches. You got referees. You got administrators. You got parents who have grown up with it. You got multiple generations of people who've been involved in the game in some form or fashion. It's there. Got to do it right. Doesn't make it easy because it's there, because there's plenty of ones that haven't done as well as others. Can't just walk in and say, we're here. Pro soccer is here. We've arrived. Now come to us.
Yeah.
No, that's not how it works. That's watched too many teams do that in the past. Nobody's doing that anymore if they're doing it right, luckily. And the people who are coming in are doing it right. Austin didn't do that, for example. Some other ownership groups, and maybe one in this city with a minor league team or a lower division team, to be precise. Maybe they had that approach at one point and it didn't work very well. You've got to go out to people and interact with them, but they're there. They are there for you. They're waiting for you. I'm not going to buy into the just, there's Big Four here, NASCAR, college football. No, that affects your plan. But no, it's not acceptable for New England to sit back and say, it's really hard for us. Do better. Keep working at it. Find what works. It should. There's a soccer community there that wants it. Some of them need to be convinced that your product's good enough. Convince. Go out there. Get it done. It's going to be harder for them because, again, you have the negative perception. But Mr. Fantastic, I know this is a very easy argument, and there's merit to it in some aspects, but I think it's also getting overused in this. Mr. Fantastic talking a little bit more about MLS. Struggle is the old owners who don't want to spend versus the new owners who want to get after it and spend/invest in new infrastructures and players. That's a different topic to me. Like, I don't know if in Houston, which you do have a new owner there, by the way. So let's, this isn't even the best. Let me think of a different one. It's not New England because they've invested.
Yeah.
New England's invested. The old narrative about Robert Kraft, I hope that's been thrown in the trash by now because he's invested. He's invested in the academy more than ever before. He's invested in facilities more than ever before. Yes, he plays at his facility that he owns. So it's a pretty good financial situation, which is not a bad facility for soccer, by the way. It's not in the best location. Hasn't really been that difficult for New England Patriots fans to find it. And this goes back to something that I do want to touch on compared about last night. So I got a question. Okay. And I've brought this up about U.S. men's national team fans too, where we can't play this team in anywhere in this place because they're going to have a lot of visiting fans. How did New York City, it was not their stadium. They're playing in Connecticut, playing at UConn Stadium. How did they not draw anybody? They had a few, but they were the visiting team. against Comunicaciones. Last time I checked, New York City's closer to Hartford than Guatemala.
Check.
I know. There's a lot of Guatemalans in the United States. But maybe this goes back to creating those connections and getting people invested. And we have to keep working at it. We're lucky here in Atlanta. We are extremely lucky in Atlanta to see what we see on a regular basis. And I'll tell you what continually surprises, astounds, and makes me happier than anything about Atlanta's fan base is seeing so many people on the road who support this team. It's not the only metric of deep support or success, but Atlanta United fans will get out there and go support their team away from home when it's not easy to do it. Great for Charlotte fans to go to DC for their opener. It's the opener. We'll see if that continues, but great for that. When you've got this game, you have to play it in Connecticut. I know there's frustration with it, but man, if you're coming off of an MLS Cup win, I don't know how much more buzz you can get for this NYC team right now. And when Glenn Crooks tweets, just met 2 Comunicaciones supporters in hotel lobby in East Hartford, both worked overnight shifts and then drove 12 hours from Michigan for the game last night. They couldn't believe the lopsided support for their side. Where were all the New York fans? So when I hear the conversation about like Foxborough, and I know Shooter didn't bring it up, it's one of those things about, well, this is, there's people around the league who have like a laundry list of excuses for why their team doesn't draw. And one is like, it's here. And Red Bulls have a ton of different excuses. None of those are any good anymore. When you've got people willing to work overnight shifts, drive 12 hours to go see their team in a game where they know their team is a massive underdog, they don't get to see their team on a regular basis. Maybe it's scarcity. Okay, we're fishing for excuses, but okay. If we're going to be about it as a soccer country, at times we got to be about it and stop the excuse making. It's Foxborough's far. There's plenty of Revs fans out there. They gotta connect to them. They gotta get them there. If the Patriots can do it, the Revs can do it. I know the Patriots have been around since, oh my goodness, the early 60s. We can't even make the Red Sox or Yankees argument when it comes to them. It's been around for a long time, but they were also hot garbage for a lot of that time. The Patriots' dominance is not historic past 2002.
And then there was the one Super Bowl with.
Well, Steve, of course they had 2 Super Bowls. That's like saying the Falcons have had dominance, John.
I don't know. I was just like, you had that one other.
That's not. I know, but Tony Eason and Steve Grogan didn't move the needle in 1986. Okay.
The only thing that moved the needle with Steve Grogan was the big neck brace.
It didn't move the needle. No, but the kids were not wearing the big neck brace in school to be like Steve Grogan. Sorry, Steve Grogan. Drew Bledsoe's year where they made it. No, it's like the Falcons' 2 Super Bowls. It's different. What the Patriots have done since, and now that's went away when Brady left, but that's different. That's a magical. But the Patriots have always drawn. Some of these bad teams have always drawn. If we're going to be about this when it comes to soccer, I think push people who listen a little bit in terms of being stewards of the game. I'm not saying go broke and go follow your team all over the country. Not all of us can do that. But if we're going to want this game to grow, we do have to be about it. That's watching. That's talking about it. That's bringing new fans in. That is going to games and supporting your team. And not making excuses for when it's not going well in terms of the business side. Because I just don't think they're valid anymore. I really don't. The Red Bulls can draw. They're in one of the, like most historic soccer areas in the country. They can draw.
Yet they don't market to it. That's the thing that gets.
Well, no, they don't like not market to New Jersey. They don't market hard enough. Their marketing is scattered, I think is the thing. They're the New York Red Bulls. They're in New Jersey. Nick Alifi listening in, Soccer Over There will return next Monday, by the way. Nick says, most New Yorkers I know don't own a car, so it's trains on trains on trains. Absolutely. There are factors to it, and being in Hartford, difficult. I understand that. But when you're getting outdrawn by a team from Guatemala, and maybe the Guatemalan fans own cars, they found a way. I watched Guatemala, and this is a long time ago. I don't think it would happen now with where the U.S. national team is. I might be wrong. I watched Guatemala get, man, this is a long time ago. My memory is decent, but I'll say maybe a third to 2/3 at Legion Field in 2005 for a friendly, or not a friendly, sorry, World Cup qualifier, U.S. and Guatemala. I think it was 2/3 U.S., but it was at least a third Guatemalan fans in Alabama, and people were driving from all over the place. Maybe the transportation is the number one thing here, but people find ways. And Red Bull's transportation comes up a lot, and I know I'm changing it to another team, but Red Bull's transportation is one of the major factors that people talk about. It's not that hard. Is it as easy as it might be for Atlanta? No, it's not. It's a lot easier to get to Mercedes-Benz. That's called good planning. But people find ways. I don't think at times we have enough who are like this couple of supporters of Comunicaciones who worked overnight shifts and then drove 12 hours to be at that game. I don't know if we have enough of those folks. And at times we have people who will just make excuses for why it's not where it should be. Jason Nix brought up the NYC away fans thing, and we talked about it. It's hard. Look, there's no easy answers here. You do have to understand, I think, the history of it, as people have had a lot of conversations here, which is great, and all over the place. And it's bringing out some of the lurkers. Good times. This is just kind of it's funny how NWSL got this going, but it's a soccer thing in this country. I think at times it's easy if we've been in the game for a long time to maybe be beaten down a bit, and you dealt with it battling with sports editors. You dealt with it battling with, getting attention in the mainstream media, and a lot of markets still deal with that. You've dealt with it dealing with coworkers who you've told to watch this game and they laugh at you. You dealt with it with all these different things, and maybe we just never think it's going to be bigger than it is. I think now is the time to put those old ideas to the side. We're seeing things that we have never seen in this sport, in this country, on a regular basis. You had two crowds, over 67,000 in the southeastern United States in the first 2 weeks of the current MLS season. If you'd said that 10 years ago, people would have put a straitjacket on you.
Mm-hmm.
Not for friendlies, and not for national team stuff, and not for special events, for the local club. That's where we are now. We've talked on this show about the 20,000 seat MLS specific stadiums are too small now. Got to go bigger. We've got to change in the game how we think it can be. That doesn't mean we stop fighting some of the old battles, because in some places they're still there. And there's some people who are just never going to get on board. Don't waste your time. It's fine. Go around it. Because it's changed so much in my lifetime. And I think maybe lately, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting older. Maybe I had a birthday recently, and that's kind of where my head is, like, thinking back. It's just so different now that you have to be grateful for that, but not complacent with that either. Like, I don't ever want to be like, this is as big as it can be. Hell no. Is MLS going to be as big as the NFL? Probably not in my lifetime. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you, nope, it can't ever be that. Nope.
Because if you don't put in the work, you don't know.
you have to put in the work, and the work does take all of us. If we are so passionate about the game, we've got to help it grow. That's why I get very frustrated with people who try to stamp down on it and are negative about it. People who love the game or say they do. It's always something negative. Like, we've got to work towards it. New England can draw. When New England draws, when that is a good lower bowl crowd at Gillette, it's a great atmosphere. It looks great on TV. Do they need a stadium closer to Boston? It would be better. But can they draw where they are? Yes. They shouldn't just accept, well, it's hard for us because there's things. No. Keep going. What's going to change it more than anything? Because we've seen changes. I mean, just very quickly, when I found the game, there was maybe in 1986 five. Well, no, not including indoor, because Major Indoor Soccer League was a different thing. It's not even the same game. Great for what it is, but it's not the same game. I don't even know if there were 5 professional teams in 1986 in this country. Fully professional. I don't even know if there was that. You had a couple of leagues that were kind of trying to do things, whatever. To the point now that we have MLS, USL Championship, USL League One, MLS Next Pro, NISA, NWSL. You're going to have a second division on the women's league. All professional. Good grief. That's insane. And then where's it going to go next? NWSL is going to get bigger. You're going to have a second division start. You're going to have very quickly more professional women's teams in this country than we would have ever dreamed 10 years ago. You're going to have the Leagues Cup starting next year, which is going to be, in my opinion, an absolute game changer for Major League Soccer. You're going to create a World Cup style competition with a league outside of yours in the summer, a self-contained competition. People have talked about putting the FA Cup and the Leagues Cup in like a certain window to have it all done in a certain period of time in England. Why would that have come up? Oh, we saw the Champions League do it with COVID. No, you saw the Leagues Cup. Don't lie. You saw what that can be. That's going to be massive. And then 2026, you're throwing a party and the world's invited. And we saw what happened in 1994. It's why we have MLS. It is an incredibly exciting time in the sport in this country. There's never been a time like this. So while, yeah, I have questions about where the New York fans were last night in Connecticut too. I have questions at times where the fans are when it's cold, when it's difficult to get there, when it's hard. I have questions about all that. And I want it to get better. But man, it is crazy right now. It is so crazy where it's going. So crazy. Abby, I'm, and this, again, coming back to the other side of things here, the pay needs to be so that being a professional athlete is their job, not having to take a second job. The revenue has to be to where they can pay them that. That also has to be understood. Like, men's leagues, not that long ago, people had to take second jobs. USL, we're past the statute of limitations. I can tell you a whole bunch of NASL players with the Atlanta Silverbacks had second jobs. There were MLS players who had second jobs not that long ago at the bottom end of the pay scale. Why? Because the teams weren't making any money. The teams weren't making enough money to pay them more. It's not a charity. And I think that's been what happened to the first 2 women's professional leagues. It was treated as a charity, and it didn't work. You've got to run it as a business. You've got to grow it to where you can pay them to where they're not working second jobs. But it's the revenue's got to be there. It's got to be there to make that happen. This has been a wild Wall Pass Wednesday that went into a completely different tangent. Sorry, I don't know why I was in this mood today. Before we get Mike Conti on, John, you've got to tell us about our good friends, Eliminize.
Can certainly do that. Eliminize Service, proud sponsors of everything SDH. QR code over my left shoulder for those of you watching on Twitch. Deodorizing enclosed spaces like houses, apartments, and condos for odor-free, clean, fresh air. Eliminize is where you need to go. created a customized solution that eliminizes all organic odors like those pet cigarettes, food, in that aisle of the store. Realtors and property managers use a Lemonize service to eliminate bad odors to help them sell or rent those facilities that much faster. It's a turnkey process that makes it easier to work with said realtors and property managers. Kind to the environment, which is important these days. It offers a green way to get rid of odors without any kind of toxic residue, different than our favorite masking agents that we have under the sink that just mask the odors in the environment. They don't attack the problem like a Lemonize does. They have a proven scientific formula that destroys odors down to the molecule. Pricing very, very easy. One of two ways, either by cubic foot or parts per million, to come up with a price that's affordable for you, offering results in 24 hours or less. If you have any questions, frequently asked or otherwise, go to their website, Lemonize.com. But do us a favor here at SDH, go /Atlanta after the .com so they know what part of the world that you are talking to them from. The website, ELIMINIZE.com. /Atlanta, Lemonize.com /Atlanta for odor-free, clean, fresh air. Proud sponsors of everything SDH.
Welcome to the show, Mike Conti.
Hey guys, good morning.
You'll like where our topic is before we jump into Atlanta, Charlotte. You can help me finish it because I've been rambling a little bit at times. The NWSL has a new commissioner. That is a good step. I'd actually forgotten that they didn't have a commissioner because there's been so many things going on in the NWSL in this last offseason. But the growth of the game, I think one of the big things for the NWSL, and it's something we talk about all the time with MLS, is expansion and adding new markets and getting new buzz and all of that. I think where I'm at is a lot of the old excuses for why it's hard for soccer to be successful from a business perspective are not valid anymore. And we're entering into a new time frame with Leagues Cup, with the growth of the game just in general, with what we've seen in Charlotte and Atlanta as they meet this weekend, with a World Cup coming, to where those old excuses don't fly anymore. And if you're successful because you're doing a good job. And if you're not successful, well, then maybe you need to look in the mirror at the job you're doing with your club, whether you're NWSL or MLS or anything.
I agree. So in terms of NWSL, where are you going with that?
I think where I'm at is with this new commissioner coming in, there has to be a bit of a mandate to get them back to where they were going into 2020, pre-COVID, where you're coming off of a World Cup. You had sponsors coming on board. You had Angel City coming into the league and a lot of hype about them. Right now, I don't feel hype about the NWSL. So you've got to get these new teams in to get your Charlottes, like what they're doing with MLS right now. You've got to get that buzz. And there's so many different markets, but they've got to show, and we talked about Atlanta, they've got to show that they are going in the right direction. They have fixed some of the issues that have slowed their growth. But there's no reason why it just can't be successful. You've got to have the right product. The league has work to do to get there. But if they start to add more teams, then I think the NWSL is getting back to where they were headed before COVID.
Well, the NWSL is in a little bit of an interesting spot because I think there is a lot of interest with owners who are not in the league currently who want to get in the league, but want almost for the NWSL to kind of prove it a little bit that some of the dysfunction is behind them now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's kind of like this awkward limbo, right? Like there are probably 3 or 4 people right now who are prominent in sports ownership who I would be willing to wager would want to get into NWSL. But those same 3 or 4 people are very, very smart business people who don't want to jump into an investment where, the league could, they could jump in and spend money on a league that could, quite frankly, in 2021, I think there was a real risk that NWSL was in danger of continuing to exist.
Yeah.
I wonder how real that was or if that was perception, but there were a number of issues that they had to fix immediately.
Yeah. So, think about the man who owns Atlanta United, who is very, very committed to growing the game of soccer and has seen soccer be a real revenue producer for him in Atlanta. He's also a very smart businessman. If I were him, I would probably want assurances that those issues are behind the league. And the only way those assurances can be provided is if the league, has another year or two of stability.
Yep.
And this is kind of like the chicken and the egg thing. Like, the man who owns Atlanta United, I think, could offer a lot of stability for NWSL.
Yep.
But he needs to see the league become stable before he jumps in on it. Does that make sense?
It's an economic catch-22.
Yeah.
That you're in this particular case.
You've got to convince somebody. And if it's Arthur, if it's Tepper, if it's Birding in Cincinnati, lots of big people in the sports world, you've got to convince one of them to take the plunge, and then maybe the other two follow.
Yeah. Isn't Meg Whitman in the Cincinnati ownership group right now?
That's who I was trying to think of. Yes.
Yeah. So, and it's not just them. I mean, it's Haslam up in Columbus.
Yeah.
You're right. It's absolutely Austin. Vegas, I think, is coming. In fact, Vegas is interesting. You have two people who are really trying to get into soccer right now. Only one of them is going to get an MLS franchise, so maybe NWSL is an option for the person who does not come out with MLS.
Yeah.
I think, Jason, the NWSL is poised for massive, massive growth if they can survive the next year or two on stable ground. Doesn't even necessarily have to be like a huge revenue generator the next few years, but they can't lose money. They can't lose franchises, and they've got to prove that they're stable.
Yeah.
Because I really believe, and this is something, Jason, I think you and I have talked to Jonathan Tannenwald about before.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the runway that the 26 World Cup and the 28 Olympics are potentially going to give MLS for the growth of men's soccer. I'm going to tell you, I think there's a really good chance that the 2031 Women's World Cup is here in the United States.
The 27 Women's World Cup could be.
That's
too.
Not
off the table either.
Yeah, it's not off the table. I don't know how likely it is that FIFA would award a men's and a women's back-to-back to the same confederation. But
FIFA did just award a World Cup to Qatar. They'll do anything for money.
That's true. I don't know if that was the cleanest process that got them that.
I hope it's not unclean to make this happen, but FIFA likes money.
But that's my point. Like, I don't know if I would necessarily put money on 27, but I think by 31 there's going to be – I think within 10 years there's going to be a Women's World Cup in this country.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
Right.
So, again, there is the runway that's in place for the growth of NWSL. If NWSL can get into a couple more markets with stable ownership and with kind of a legacy of fan support for soccer, and honestly, I feel those markets are Atlanta, Cincinnati, potentially Charlotte. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
Potentially Nashville. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just a couple off the top of my head. The league's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
But this first step with the leadership is a big first step. And I'm sad it didn't work out for Lisa Baird. She's a Penn Stater, but her tenure as commissioner became untenable with everything that came up last year. It was just untenable. Yeah. So this is a good first start. And I think Cindy Parlow-Cohn being in the position that she is in right now also helps dramatically.
Huge.
The NWSL is really poised to capitalize because media groups need content. They've got the content. CBS and Paramount benefited from having the content in 2020, and that relationship has grown and blossomed. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the pieces are there, but they've just got to prove it now before I think you see the next wave of potential ownership and investment come in.
Yeah, I think before we move on, because I want to get into what Darren Eales said yesterday on 92.9, I think maybe because of a second division getting started, because of the growth of the game in other parts of the world, they do have to stabilize. But I think by the end of the year, there has to be positive momentum by the end of 22.
Yeah.
To get to where they want to be. Maybe not an official expansion announcement for 24, 25, but signs that things are going in that direction quickly. It can't be just a build the foundation year. I think it's got to be more than that. It's a tough job that Jessica Berman's walking into. Excited to see where that can go. We'll talk more about it as we go, as things get closer for the Challenge Cup getting started. But let's get into Atlanta and Charlotte this weekend. We're, I think, maybe possibly in two places at once right now, with our interview that we did yesterday with Crown Corner up in Charlotte. We're going to have Will and Jess on stoppage time this afternoon to inform us all about Charlotte and everything that they are doing. But we got some pretty good news yesterday, at least potentially, from Darren Eales, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there was necessarily any confirmations in any of it, but there was I think a lot of optimism when Darren Eales appeared on the local radio partner yesterday to say that Thiago Almada is likely going to be back in the country this week. And some people have pointed out, I think correctly, I think I saw this on Reddit, that kind of aligns with the timetable that it's taking for a lot of the other visa players in the league right now. Kind of like that 4-week timetable that Almada's apparently at the end of that. So it sounds like Almada is going to be back in the country, and Darren said they're hopeful he can play against Charlotte. That would be big. Darren said that they were hopeful that Moreno could be available from selection from the start and potentially play 90. That's huge. That is massive, right? Especially because we know Araújo is going to be out for at least the next two. Darren said that Sosa and Ibarra have their green cards. That's big. Now they're back in the country. That's big. Darren also said they have to get up to speed in training. And I think that's a really important third element to this, because one of the reasons why Sosa and Ibarra did their green cards when they did is because they were not yet ready to play due to injury or coming off surgery or whatever. So I think the club's philosophy was, okay, well, they can't play anyway. Let's knock out the green cards while we can. Green cards are knocked out. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that Sosa and Ibarra could be ready to play this weekend.
Right. Ibarra is far closer, I would assume, just based off the injuries that they're both dealing with. Sosa had a sports hernia surgery. Didn't really ever have a clear timeline, but
exactly.
It's kind of typical with sports hernia surgeries. It's not like other injuries, so.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with Hyndman too. I mean, with ACLs, you just have to go so cautiously and so slowly just to be 100% sure. I think the biggest piece of information from Darren, though, on this interview with the local radio partner yesterday was that he sounds really optimistic that the Osvaldo Alonso thing is going to check out okay.
Yes.
And that is really, really big because, as Darren explained yesterday, with Robinson out, you want to be able to play Campbell at center back. If you play Campbell at center back, then you need a defensive midfielder. Alonso ideally could be that guy. So I know there was a lot of concern when that club statement came out on Saturday about Osvaldo Alonso because there was some ambiguity in that. But it sounds like they're pretty optimistic that Alonso is going to clear any follow-up screens and be available for Sunday, and that would be enormous news.
So there are a lot of possible green lights here that you can have for these next couple of matches. A lot of optimism in all of this, and it's good to see all of these pieces that everyone has anticipated being a part of this Atlanta United roster finally getting that much closer to being a part of the full 90 or being a part of the match day roster. All of these pieces, the anticipation, I think, is part of this as well, Mike, where you're that much closer to having everything at full song.
Getting there. I mean, not fully there yet, but getting there. You're almost kind of in triage mode right now because you have so many guys out. So, you look at Sunday or this past Saturday, where do you need the most help immediately right now? I thought George Campbell did an absolutely adequate job.
He was
but with Miles out, now George has got to play center back, or you're going to play Alex DeJohn.
Right.
Okay, so to me, it's vital you get Osvaldo Alonso back. As excited as I am to see Thiago Almada and to see Marcelino Moreno potentially play a full 90 together, and I don't know if they both would be able to play a full 90 on Sunday, but it certainly sounds like it's trending in the right direction maybe for Montreal the following week. As much as I want to see that, I got to triage the situation at center back right now because Miles got red carded. So not to downplay Almada potentially making his competitive debut for Atlanta United on Sunday. And again, I don't think we know that for sure yet. It just sounds like it's trending in the right direction. The big thing for me, John, is, man, we got to get Sosa back. And until we do, Alonso's got to keep playing at a high level. And until that happens, you've got to keep your center backs on the field. That, to me, is what I'm more excited about. So, I think Atlanta United could deal with Charlotte more than acceptably if it is Campbell and Franco at center back and Osvaldo Alonso in front of them. If that's the alignment, if that's the selection for Sunday, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I think they've got ways to solve the issues, but it's a new issue. And we talked about it at the end of the match, and we talked about it on our abbreviated full-time report. The decision on the second yellow from Miles, that hurts you more than just it normally would because of the other absences, which maybe aren't even there anymore. So then it maybe doesn't hurt you quite as much. But that decision-making was a little surprising in putting himself in that spot. That was one of the biggest disappointments for me on Saturday. I thought in general, and looking back at it and having a chance to study back on that game a little bit, maybe even a better performance than I felt like it was at the time for Atlanta United, or it wasn't as strong of a performance from Colorado as maybe I thought at the time. They were very good in their individual moments. They were disruptive, and their pitch helped be disruptive as well at times. But Atlanta created more chances. Atlanta, didn't give up a ton of chances either. They gave up some big chances, which is a problem. They didn't create as many big chances as they did the previous week. But it wasn't – it's almost like the Charlotte-DC game where DC wins 3-0. You think Charlotte was a dumpster fire. No, they weren't. It was a closer game than that. This one was a closer game than 3-0, and it really comes down to Yarbrough making a couple of huge plays and Atlanta not converting in moments where I think the trajectory of the game changes if they do. And it's not like they only had 2 chances to convert. They had the chances, but they did not convert.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there have been some matches like that over the last 3 or 4 years.
It happens. It's the game. It's just this is how it goes.
It's soccer. It's soccer.
Drives nuts.
Colorado was better in moments, but I thought Atlanta United was not bad in the match. And it was really kind of a harsh scoreline, to be honest with you. You hear 3-0 and you think you got run off the pitch. And that's not what happened. That's not really what happened. I didn't love the way that Atlanta responded to the first goal because I didn't think they needed to change anything at that point. I thought they had match control. I don't want to say they overreacted or panicked to the goal, but they could have been more confident in that situation.
Got a little antsy. Yeah, they started rushing things a little.
Unnecessarily, I felt. You still had an hour to play. You're right. Yarbrough made some big saves. Atlanta United needed to challenge him more than the 3 occasions where he had to make big saves. I mean, I think that's probably fair to say. But I think also you have to kind of evaluate the reality of the situation. You were in that match with Almada out, with Araujo out, with Moreno unable to play 90, with Sosa out, with Alonso out, and you didn't find out until 24 hours before the match.
That's the big
and that puts you on your heels when it comes to planning, finding out.
Absolutely. And look, Pineda, I thought his idea was correct, that rather than change everything, just make a change at the position where you have the need and keep going. I thought that was a very defensible strategy. But, you have those 5 guys out or not 90 minutes fit. Then on top of it, no Hyndman, no Mulraney, Noah Barra. At some point, it just kind of adds up as being a little bit too much. You only had 19 players on your team sheet. It was. I'm not trying to make an excuse. Colorado won the match, and they were the deserving winner. But I didn't think Atlanta United deserved 3-0. It felt like a match where Atlanta United probably deserved the result. I also didn't like how frustrated Atlanta United got. Didn't love that. Miles' red card was not a good red card. I'll just say it flat out. I mean, you can argue that the dissent yellow that he got in the first half, you don't really know what happened there. But, at the end of a match where the result is secure, you can't be doing what Miles did. I thought that was very poor. I really did not love what Dom Dwyer did at the end of the match, quite frankly.
I don't really care about that one, to be honest.
Yeah, I thought they got a little bit too frustrated, a little bit too emotionally drunk in that game, to use a Nate McMillan term. And that's something that, they're just going to have to kind of play through. They had not really faced a lot of adversity in the season until Saturday, obviously. I mean, I don't think you count adversity in preseason friendlies. So, maybe it's better that they kind of had their wake-up call there on the road. I also think, though, you can't discount the quality of Colorado. I think, and I'll admit, I kind of got stuck on the way they played in Champions League.
Yeah. Well, you have to.
I got stuck on that, but
there's nothing wrong with that. They played by far their best game of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, like night and day by far.
And this is pretty much still the same group that only lost once in 17 regular season home matches last year. Pretty much still the same group. So it is what it is. I'm not trying to make an excuse. I don't worry at all, though, about Atlanta United going forward into these next two home matches based on what happened on Saturday.
No. I'm gonna try to make a new SDH rule if we can.
Okay.
Because I want to further the conversation in 2022. I am going to make a decree that when we talk about a game and we talk about the factors that led to a win or a loss, we don't have to tell you that we're not making excuses anymore. You understand that, because it's not making an excuse to say that Colorado scored a beautiful goal on a turnover to start the second half that killed you. You get an early goal in the second half, we're 1-1. It's a wild game. You give up that second goal, it's tough. Played well after. They had the control of the game after that, but they couldn't get a goal out of it. But it's not making an excuse to say that Colorado did really well in a crossing situation in the final third in the first half and a quick, not even counter, because it's one ball, a quick strike in the second, and they won. It's not an excuse to say that the Osvaldo Alonso absence absolutely derailed your whole week of planning. Like these, I want people out there, and I'm gonna challenge people who listen to our show at least. When we talk about factors in games, it's not excuses. It's the story. You can look at whatever chart you have about match control or activity or any of that, and it's all Atlanta outside of the first goal that Colorado scored, and Mike's dead on. Atlanta took a while to get going again. They did at the very end of the half, and they had a wonderful chance at the end of the half that Joseph couldn't put on goal.
Mm-hmm.
Then to start the second half, I mean, it's 3 minutes, and you've given up the second goal. From then on, it's complete control. It's also 2-0. Colorado can concede that control. They can sit back. But that's the flow of the game. It was 2 chances against the run of play in the first 50 minutes of the game that they converted, and you had 2 chances, because I'll include the Joseph chance, it doesn't turn into a shot, that were just as good or better, and you didn't convert. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, the 4 big Atlanta chances, and I don't know if Opta scored these as big chances, but just
I think they scored 2 of them. I think Atlanta had 2 big chances.
Yeah, they did.
All of Colorado's were big chances. They had 3.
Right. But to me, it felt like Atlanta United was imminently going to score on 4 occasions.
Yes.
The Wolf shot at the very beginning where Yarborough made the kick save.
Yeah.
The Campbell header where Yarborough tipped it over the crossbar.
Yep.
Joseph's second half shot that Yarborough just got a piece of. And then Joseph kind of getting tangled up in the ball at the end of the first half at the penalty spot. So those were the four moments where I thought Atlanta United had a goal.
Yep.
And unlucky or whatever, they didn't score on any of them. Colorado, in my opinion, had 4 really, really big, imminent goal moments, and they scored on 3. And one was kind of a scramble situation. Early in the game, actually, pretty early, there was a scramble down on our end, Jason, in the first half that Atlanta United dealt with okay. But the play recycled a couple times.
I wasn't thinking of that one. They had the one after they took the 1-0 lead that was the cross to the near post that was pushed wide. That was the other one that I thought they should have.
Okay. So, I mean, I'll give you that. So maybe it was like 5-4 on the big chance. I mean, look, again, statistically, the XG kind of was what it was. Colorado 1.5, Atlanta 3/4.
Yeah, I think
like that kind of match. The key passes were tilted to Atlanta. Shots and shots on target were led by Atlanta. Possession wildly in favor of Atlanta. So, I mean, these aren't opinions. These are statistical facts. I mean,
one thing about XG, and I think this game will show you a little bit of the fallacy of it. It's not complete. The Joseph one is the one that I'm saying. Like, that Joseph one at the end of the half, because it's not a shot.
It's no XG.
There's no XG. And we know that is a big chance from where it is. So I think you do have to, it factors in, absolutely, but you do have to factor in the whole match. And I think what you just laid out, that's the story of the match. It's both teams had about the same number of big opportunities. Colorado converted, Atlanta did not. And Yarborough had a hand in Atlanta not converting as well, but you didn't.
And it was not unentertaining football. It was, I thought it was
good.
2 different approaches, but entertaining football, a lot of end-to-end play, especially as Colorado started to sit back a little bit after getting the second goal. So it's not like it was just pointless possession for 90 minutes. Like there was a purpose to it. So, look, I think, again, you're never as good as you are when you think you're good. You're never as bad as you think you are when you're bad. That, I think, was proven on Saturday. You're never as bad as you think you are when you have a bad result. Now you have an opportunity in a winnable home game Sunday to get right mentally and get some help that will hopefully make it easier for you to get right mentally. So I think they're in a good spot. I really, really do.
Yeah, nothing's changed in how I feel about it because we haven't seen the complete Atlanta United team yet. So that has to happen before I start really being able to evaluate where things are for the whole season. In the short term, you got to win your home games, and you get what you can on the road. You got to win your home games, and you've got one on Sunday that you should be in a position to be favored. You have a stronger team. It might be an even stronger team than we thought it was going to be when we left Colorado, which is great news. We'll see what that turns into. But it's not going to be easy because nothing in this league is. I think Charlotte will come in and be very well prepared. They're going to play probably a line of 5 as they have most of the season. That takes spaces away from the attack. You're going to have to find ways to deal with that, pick the weak spots, exploit them. Going to have to keep getting Joseph fed and maybe fed more in terms of chances. But as we said at the end of that first half, that's a chance that I'm used to him burying. And it doesn't happen because it doesn't always happen. But you see that ball come in from Gutman. I'm ready for a goal call. Like, I was ready for a goal there and shocked that the shot didn't happen. That's soccer. That's what the best in the world do, though. When that next one comes in, and it very well could be in the first 15 minutes against Charlotte, you have to expect Joseph to bury that. And then everything's different. That's the biggest thing about Colorado in that game for me is if you get the early goal, I think you win 3-0 because I think Colorado's confidence would have been absolutely shot because it was dented coming in. You get the goal at the end of the first half that would have made it 1-1. I really like Atlanta's chances in the second half. If Campbell's goal goes in and it's 2-1 at that point, I can easily see Atlanta getting a result at minimum out of that. but they didn't. And that's where it goes. You just didn't convert. I hear that the local radio partner of the team has a digital presentation today at 2:00.
Yes. Yeah. And Will and Jess from Charlotte, well, Jess from Atlanta, but working for Charlotte now. They'll join us midway through the show to preview the matchup. But yeah, we have a lot to get into on stoppage time, 2:00 Eastern time on the 92.9 The Game Facebook page. And I just want to Shiva's question on the Twitch pitch really quick.
Yeah.
Don't read anything into Ozzie Alonso not training today. Don't read anything into that. Okay. That like the cardiac testing that he's undergoing, I think is going to take a couple days to resolve.
Yes.
So go with what Darren Eales told the local radio partner yesterday, that they're optimistic that by the end of the week he'll clear and he can play. Don't read anything into the fact that he would not be training today.
Yeah, no, I don't think that.
And also don't read anything into the fact that Almada is not training, because remember, Darren said they were hopeful they could get him into the country this week. He said that about 12 hours ago. So not a whole lot can really change there in 12 hours.
Yeah, Jake Mulroney is training. That is good.
Good. That's good.
Yep.
That's good to see.
That is good news. But yeah, basically don't overreact in life. Let's make that a decree.
Tranquilo, exactly.
Tranquilo. No overreaction.
There's your us this year.
All right. We'll see you at 2:00, Mike.
All right. See you guys.
Be good.
All right. We will do a lot of Q&A. Now, I'll try to make myself not do it too. I'm not going to try to do it anymore because I feel like because people have said, and I'm sensitive to it, and I know Mike is too, like, whenever we talk about a game that Atlanta loses, if we're not throwing things and saying that everybody should be fired, we're making excuses.
Right.
No. That from now on, I'm going to go with the understanding that our audience is very smart and knows that when we're talking about a game, we're talking about a game and giving you our thoughts on it. And it's not excuse making. I don't think anything that we're saying about this game is excuse making. Losing Osvaldo Alonso 24 hours beforehand is disruptive. It didn't affect the result, in my opinion. Colorado converting their chances, Atlanta not, is why it was 3-0. And that's it. It wasn't horrible play. It wasn't bad tactics. It wasn't all of these things. It wasn't bad effort. It wasn't bad passion. It wasn't any of that. You didn't convert. Colorado did. Ball game.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it comes down to in this one. Sometimes there's other storylines to it. It's not always that simple. But in this one, to me, if Atlanta gets a goal from any of those first three chances, maybe even the Joseph one, although that was a lot later, there wouldn't have been as much time. But any of those first three, even the Campbell one that would have made it 2-1, I think Atlanta at a minimum is getting a result. But they didn't. They didn't. That's what happens. So just how it goes. But we'll talk about more of that game to a degree. We'll look ahead to Charlotte. We'll talk to Will and Jess and get more on Charlotte and where things are. We're going to have Will on tomorrow morning here on SDH as well in the 9:00 hour. So stay tuned for that. Kind of working around the training session in Charlotte tomorrow. I don't think that had been officially scheduled. So we're going to get Will on in the 9:00 hour. And go check out Crown Corner, the WFNZ show on their digital platforms. I know there is a podcast edition as well. I think it's on their YouTube as well. Jess Talks Footy, our old friend Jessica Charman, has tweeted out all the links to that. So go check that out. Mike and I talked to them yesterday. And they had Jalen Lindsay, their right wing back, on today as well. So we're getting into questions and stuff here to finish up. I do want to touch on a couple bits of news before we do, since I got rambly in the first hour of the show.
Last Wednesday, that's what it's all about, man.
Yeah, there wasn't much wall passing. I was dribbling and slaloming. It was Gambetta Wednesday. Bradley Wright Phillips has retired. One of the all-time greats in Major League Soccer, 117 goals across 234 games, almost all of those with the New York Red Bulls. Golden Boot 2014, 2016, 3 supporter shields during his time in New Jersey. One of the best to ever do it in this league. And some people will use his success in this league to say, well, he was playing in the lower divisions in England, so What it shows me is that there are some players who fit in other leagues really well. And sometimes, and I think English players need to do this, I think Mexican players need to do this, because at times it's like, money's pretty good. I don't want to leave my home country. I'm going to stay here and play. If I move down the ladder a little bit in prominence, that's fine. Sometimes you go to another club somewhere else, the game might suit you a little bit more. Bradley Wright Phillips came here. The game suited him a lot more than the League One championship, League Two, long ball, kick and chase. That's not his game. We saw him play in this league. He came to a place that he could play, and it suited him, and he did really, really well. One of the best in league history. And if Red Bulls were smart, they would do something this season to honor him in a big way. And I hope that they do. Michelle Kaufman of the Miami Herald reports that Minor Figueroa, Honduran team captain, center back, played with Wigan in England for most of his career. He was in Houston the last 2 years. He's been with FC Dallas. He is 38 years old. He is training this week with Miami. At 38, he would still be a better option at center back than Breck Shea, because Breck Shea is not a center back.
Oh.
It showed. They've had some injuries. They also have some older players on. They're already older on that roster that you just can't expect to play all that often. And yeah, as good a work as Chris Henderson has done, it's still pretty thin. And you can't fix everything in one transfer window. He's still got work to do, but Minor Figueroa might be a Band-Aid for now. And he's available. And look, he's still playing with Honduras. So, I mean, can he walk in and play for you and, again, be a better center back than Breck Shea? Yes, he absolutely can. Breck is a fine left back, left winger in this league, super sub, all kinds of things he can do to affect your game. He's not doing it from center back.
No.
He's just not. Matt Turner likely to be sidelined a couple more weeks with an ankle injury. He was close to coming back, according to reports last week, for this upcoming week, but that looks like it's been pushed back further. Arena said probably a couple of weeks from now he'll be available. So that is putting his participation with the U.S. men's national team in serious, serious doubt for 3 essential World Cup qualifiers. Scotland's World Cup playoff semifinal against Ukraine has been postponed. FIFA confirmed that Wales and Austria will go ahead as planned. Now, that's the other half of that section in UEFA qualifying. So I wondered if that would be pushed back as well, and they do all of it at once. It's not. Scotland and Ukraine has been pushed back. It will be moved to June. In addition, FIFA have granted Poland a bye to the Path B final after throwing Russia out of the tournament as a sanction for the invasion. That is an upgrade of where the initial language was about they were suspended, and it was almost like they were waiting as late as they could to completely kick them out. They're out. It's completely gone. Poland gets a bye to that. Poland will play Sweden or the Czech Republic in the Path B final. Robert Lewandowski went nuts yesterday. Bayern is the most up and down team. I swear. It's just, they look like world beaters. It was against Red Bull Salzburg. They looked like world beaters. And then they lose games that they just shouldn't lose domestically. They are very up and down, but they are still very dangerous. First time a Champions League hat trick has been completed as early as the 23rd minute.
Woo.
Good grief. Not the quickest hat trick, because you had, I believe, a sub came on in 2011 and got 3 goals in 8 minutes. But in the first 23 of the game to get a hat trick, what Lewandowski did, absurd. 2 of them are penalties, so maybe let's slow our freaking out completely, because it is 2 penalties. But he was also brought down both of those times. It's 2 penalties, though, John. You're supposed to convert those.
Yes, that is true. And
78% of the time you're supposed to convert those.
Yes. And then Serge Gnabry scores. It was 4-0 at the
it's done.
It's
3 and 20.
Literally 3 and 23 minutes, and it was just on from there. And it was 4-0 at the break, 7-1 final, 8-2 in the aggregate. Yeesh.
It's done. I mean, it's done. It was done in 23 minutes.
Yeah.
Liverpool got through. They did lose, as John predicted, to enter yesterday, but they got through 2-1 on aggregate. The red card to Alexis Sanchez has gotten a lot of debate. it was called the way it is consistently called. Do I love the way it's consistently called? No, because it's very difficult when you are sliding in for that ball and you win that ball to then be able to get your boot out of the way. But that's how it's been called consistently worldwide. So I can't really argue with it. Follow through is one of the hardest things for me in terms of giving cards for. Like, there's times when it's obvious, when it's like a high boot and you go up and you win it and your follow through kicks somebody in the head. This one's a little trickier for me. It is studs up eventually on the opposing player. The way it is called is the way it was called here. If you want to have that debate about how to fix that, that's not going to be an easy one, because that is a really tough judgment. It's really difficult. Could he have won the ball and not made that contact with the player? I don't know if he could have, honestly. So should he be penalized? The way the game's called, yes. If you want to get into right and wrong, you can convince me that he shouldn't be. But then do players take advantage going the other way? And then you have to call it tighter. And it's still a judgment. It's a judgment wherever you set the line. Yeah. It's a judgment any which way. But it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Inter wasn't happy about it. That killed Inter's momentum. Done. The other big question about this one was Edin Dzeko not playing in this, not starting, which got a lot of people's, antenna up, but then not coming in. And Simone Inzaghi told Sky Italia, Dzeko will be very important in Turin, so I had to make I had to make other calculations. And the question from Twitter this morning is, so they play Torino on Sunday in the evening in a league match. They prioritize that over going out in the Champions League at this stage?
Yeah.
Couldn't you have brought him on for the last 20 or so, something like that? And you get a set piece, you get a corner, he could get on the end of it? I would think so. I'm baffled on the reasoning there. That feels like a bad decision. Today, we talked about the games. Pep Guardiola, you put this into the notes, got some buzz going when he called Kyle Walker stupid.
Yeah.
Pep Guardiola's not dumb. He's not stupid. You can make this criticism of Walker. He got a red card for kicking Andre Silva in the 2-1 defeat to Leipzig in the final group game in December. You can make it now because you're in a really good position going into this game. You wouldn't make it if you weren't in a good position. You wouldn't say anything. You wouldn't go to this degree. You can make the point to everybody about being careful and dealing with it and all of that. You can do all that right now. You couldn't do that if it was tighter. Pep picks his spots.
Yeah.
He picks his spots. This is a little bit harsher than I'm used to Pep being about a player's mistake, but they're going to struggle it right back a little bit. He's missing some pieces. Said we don't have many players, just 14 available. First leg, incredible result, but football's unpredictable. Red cards, quality opponent. We'll take a top side as much as possible. Not many alternatives, but we will do the best team possible to win the game. They should be fine with the cushion.
You're up 5-0 going into this leg. You should.
I think they'll be okay. Last night, CONCACAF, we talked about the crowd in East Hartford. NYC got a 3-1 win. I thought they needed a 2-goal cushion. They got it. Comunicaciones put up a good fight, though. The goal from Maxi Morales. Woo! Woo! Maxi's one of my favorite players to watch. Really well worked as well. And then a really nice volley in the 65th minute. Rodriguez, who I think is a big factor for them going forward, he made it 3-1 with a goal in the 71st. Tati with a nice header in the first half. Good win for NYC. Even better win for Seattle. It could have been a whole lot more against León. 3-0 is what it ended up as. Freddie Montero with 2. Jordan Morris with a late one. That third one is really critical. Christian Roldan was out freaking standing. 5 chances created, 2 assists. He drew a penalty. He was everywhere on the pitch, really involved in the press. Brian Schmetzer was raving about him afterwards, talking about how much Emotionally, he affects the team, stuff that you can't register. And he attacked the dataverse, the metaverse, and SofaScore and FootMob, and he attacked all of it. You guys can do all the data you want. I look at the data and I say Cristiano Ronaldo's an excellent player, and the emotional part is part of this. The versatility is a huge part of it. He can play anywhere on the field. He can affect the game in so many different ways. If he is one of those guys, and look, we do this in this country all the time, it drives me crazy to no end. If he is not an elite national team player, it doesn't mean he is not an elite MLS player. That's a credit to the national team and the growth of it, that you can have guys who are elite in your domestic league that are not quite elite at that national team level. That's fine. That's actually a good thing. Cristiano Ronaldo is one of the best in the league, and he has been for a long time. Just an outstanding player. And he will factor into the national team from a much different position than he does with Seattle. Much different position. Obed Vargas is another big story for Seattle coming out of that. 16 years old, really, really good. Just very mature in the way that he plays. Another start for him, central midfield. Mikey Varas, the U20 U.S. men's national team coach, was raving about him, said he's a top talent. He is legit, and he doesn't play like a 16-year-old. We're seeing more of those come up around this country. Noah Cobb doesn't play like a 16-year-old. Obed Vargas doesn't play like a 16-year-old. Maybe we have to start redefining what a 16-year-old at this level is expected to play like. We'll see. 2 games tonight. New England Revolution hosting Pumas at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough. We'll see what the crowd looks like for this one. Tough for the Revs without those first 2 games against Cavalli. This is going to be a tough test for them. Same situation as the games yesterday. They need a win, and they need a win by a couple of goals. It's not going to be easy against Pumas. 10 o'clock, Montreal's in a different situation. They're on the road. They're in Mexico City playing Cruz Azul. Be curious to see what the crowd is like. It is at the Estadio Azteca, which is not Cruz Azul's traditional home. They'll still have plenty of fans there. Montreal doesn't have to win this game. If they get a result, they're in great shape coming into the second leg. If they lose by 1, they're in good shape coming into the second leg. If they lose by more than 1, it's going to be tough sledding. That's a tougher situation. And Montreal has looked weaker, honestly, than any of these teams. And we had questions about NYC and Seattle going into those games. At least Seattle had, and NYC had big performances in CONCACAF. Montreal had a good performance in the second game in CONCACAF. But then a lot of that was diminished by their first 2 games in MLS. So how do they do going to Cruz Azul? Is it just focusing on this? If it is, that's fine. Second legs next week, 8 o'clock and 10:15 for the games from yesterday. In Guatemala at 8, in Mexico at 10:15. And the second legs for the games today are next Wednesday. Montreal hosts at the Big O at 8 o'clock. And the Revs are at Pumas at 10:15 next week. Nothing else huge. Mainz has requested that their game with Augsburg is, they've requested a postponement due to a COVID outbreak. They did have the match with Dortmund postponed last weekend. I don't know where their outbreak currently stands. Lots of talk around what's going to happen with Chelsea. I think it's going to be talk for a while. I don't know if we've had any real developments there. Tottenham getting closer for a naming rights agreement for their stadium. That is essential for them. That is a huge revenue generator for them. Barnsley think Reading are cheating. What in the world?
Well, it has to do with the amount of money that you can put on the books as a loss over a 3-year period. And in a letter to the chief executive of the EFL, Barnsley chief exec is asking for more clarity around, and Jessica Charman probably just needs to go earmuffs here, clarity around Reading's compliance, since Reading is her club. With the business plan that was agreed to, Reading accepted a 6-point penalty because they went outside the rules when it came to the amount of money that you can lose over a 3-year period. And so right now they think that they're getting around the rule again past the numbers that have already been posted. And so Barnsley is trying to turn the screws on Reading, because Reading is right there above the relegation scrap right now, even with the penalty. Barnsley is 5 points behind Reading. Reading's at 29 points. Wayne Rooney and Derby are at 24 with a 21-point deduction that they've gotten this season.
It's incredible what Rooney's done with that team.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, if they hadn't have had the 21-point deduction, they're a 500 team, literally. They've won 11. They've drawn 12. They've lost 13. Literally, they're a 500 team with 10 matches to go. They would be in 15th place and far and away not a part of this discussion. But Reading right now, 5 points away from the relegation fight. Barnsley are the ones who've gone to the EFL and said, hey, check their numbers again to try and see if, Barnsley can find a way to get more of a points deduction for Reading so they don't have to be a part of the relegation discussion or be dragged into it, because you've got 3 teams separated by 2 points that are 5 points away from Reading when it comes to being relegated out of the championship. So I don't think this is going to be ending anytime soon.
But is there anything to this, or are they grasping at straws? Your gut reaction.
My gut reaction is I don't trust Reading's books any farther than I can throw them.
Okay. So there could be something to it.
There could be something here.
Okay.
And so let's see where it goes. But yeah, the way that we've seen books being creatively prepared on multiple occasions in the championship recently, I'm thinking that they better do the math.
Well, just because other teams did it doesn't mean Reading did it. I don't want to see this like the what baseball turned into last season with, I think he's got something on his glove or his hands. Right. Check the mound, and we're checking pitchers at the end of every inning.
Yeah,
that's what I'm asking. Is there something potentially to it that Reading did something wrong, or is Barnsley just like, yeah, we want a quick fix?
I would say where there's smoke, there's fire, but it also would not surprise me to see that, they're trying that Barnsley's grasping at a straw here, but considering past evidence, I can see where they're coming from, if this makes sense.
Okay. Sitting on that fence.
Well,
cool. I don't know. I'm asking. Like, I don't know if, I don't know if Reading's doing something wrong here or not, but I feel like Barnsley might be.
Well, but considering that the loss in the first place was where the EFL says you're only allowed 39 million pounds of loss over a 3-year period.
Right.
And Reading records a loss of 57.8.
Yeah.
Then you're sitting there going, okay, what have you guys done since then? I can see where Barnsley's coming from considering past evidence. Is Reading trying to hang on? Are they trying to hang on come hell or high water and do whatever it takes to stay afloat? I can see that, considering that you way overspent from the profit and loss perspective. I mean, literally, you went over by half.
Yes, and they got punished for that. That doesn't mean they did it again.
No,
that's what I'm saying.
I know, and that's what you're saying. But once again, I'm sitting there saying, you're trying to stay afloat, and you're in a fight.
All right.
I'm like, okay,
check their books in perpetuity, because they did it once.
And
forever, check their books every month. Let's check their books.
Well, and apparently what they did in the transfer window in January is they brought in even more talent.
Yeah.
And so, all right, how much are you spending and how is this translating? And so I think that that's also where Barnsley's going here. It's like, well, wait a second. If they've lost this much money and they're continuing to spend, aren't they losing more money?
I'm more baffled by the English rules about this than I was at the beginning of the conversations. I'm just going to leave it.
Yeah,
we're good.
It's just, there's math, and I hate math, and then there's subterfuge, and it's just like, come on, figure it out.
Maybe they can go buy Lyon because they're up for sale, according to Sportico and others. This is another major club, not in the same realm as Chelsea, but another major club that is looking to sell to the highest bidder. Looks like Rain Group has been appointed to manage the potential sale. So be on the lookout for more on Lyon being for sale.
Yeah, Rain Group is also in charge of the Chelsea sale as well. So they are
a
commodity right now.
Well, they're good at getting sales done, I guess. And if you're trying to get Chelsea and you don't get Chelsea, maybe Rain Group's like, but we got this over here, and maybe we'll push you there. Update on Querétaro and Liga MX. So they have not been kicked out of the league. They have been punished as severely as I have ever heard of, which they needed to be. Home matches with no fans for 1 year. They've banned the Barra Bravas for 3 years. The ownership group, which is 4 individuals, is not the ownership group anymore. Gabriel Solares, Adolfo Rios, Greg Taylor, and Emmanuel Velarde have been banned from league-related activities for 5 years. Club is returned to its previous owners, Grupo Caliente, which also owns Tijuana, which does not have much money. The current ownership group has been fined 1.5 million pesos, which is $70,000 and some change. Grupo Caliente has been tasked with selling Querétaro by the end of this year. If it is unable to do so, then it goes under the ownership of Liga MX. Liga MX club ownership is sometimes very tenuous. You see the ownership of the club's rights to operate in Liga MX sold when you were getting teams relegated in the past. That's why they don't have relegation currently. So there's a lot of weird things with that. So basically they revoked the ownership. They gave it back to the group that had it before and told them to sell it.
Yeah,
that's where it stands. Again, according to reports, and there have been disputes to this report, we've said this every time, 26 people injured, 19 have been released from the hospital, 2 remain hospitalized. Officially, no deaths have been reported. That does not mean that there haven't been, because this is far more complicated in the way this stuff gets reported, even from a non-football related situation. 14 arrests have been made. We mentioned 10 yesterday. More have been made. 14 have been made on potential charges that include violence in a sporting event and attempted homicide. Other safety measures that are going to be implemented by Liga MX teams, and some of these were already in progress for 2022, 2023. That'll be the Apertura at the second half of this year and the Clausura at the beginning of 23. Facial recognition technology, fan IDs that'll register and identify members of the supporters groups that are official from the clubs. Minors are no longer allowed in the supporters group sections. State, local, and municipal police will provide security at Liga MX games as opposed to private security often used. That's one of the biggest changes to this for me. The youth and women's squads will also have to play behind closed doors at Querétaro, and they will be sold with the rest of the club when that happens. They decided not to disaffiliate them, to kick them out of the league to avoid impacting everybody else. But they're not going to be allowed to profit from being Querétaro at all until they are sold. And our reports that Cuauhtemoc Blanco, who has been a politician in Mexico, he is trying to bring the franchise, I can't remember the name of the city, but basically as a revival of Zacatecas, which is an older historic team that is currently not active. You've had a lot of that with teams either dropping into the Ascenso, which is now the Liga de Expansión, which Celaya and Tepatitlan, who we saw in preseason with Atlanta United. You've had some historic clubs that have not reconfigured themselves. Celaya has been like 5 different versions of Celaya over the last 25 years. Atletico Celaya, Club Celaya. It's changed, like minor little changes. Zacatecas is one that has not been anywhere for a while, at least a little bit. And they could be one place that maybe if somebody comes up to buy the team, that could be where Querétaro ends up going. I don't think you're going to have a team in Querétaro anytime soon after this. And it's a shame for the good fans in Querétaro, but the club was negligent in handling this coming into it. They didn't have the right people there, and I'm sure there is more behind the scenes than we're probably going to hear about in this country, because you do have too many of these Barra Bravas that have criminal ties and criminal elements that work with the teams. So, and the teams allow them to do their thing, And in this case, at least to some degree, they were allowed to create this horrific situation. So we will continue to give you updates on this as more comes. There probably will be more in terms of arrests and all of that, hopefully. One other thing out of Mexico before we grab a couple of questions before we go. Tomas Boy, who was last managing Mazatlan in the 21 Clausura, I believe he was the captain of the 86 World Cup team that reached the quarterfinals. He was the all-time scorer at Tigres up until very recently. He passed away yesterday, a legend of the game in Mexico. Andre Pierre Gignac, who took his all-time scoring title at Tigres away, he posted a message. Tigres fans, he played at Tigres the most, played at a few other clubs as well, but a legend in the game at the national team level, as a player at Tigres, and as a manager at a number of different places. He passed away yesterday. So on top of the other sadness in Mexico, this is also there for Tigres fans. One of the best. I mean, one of the best. His managerial career wasn't as good as his playing career, but as a player, one of the absolute best of the 70s and 80s in Mexico.
And when you, and this will be my request for today, go down a YouTube rabbit hole if you have time, just so you can see the kind of player that he was, and that way it's another way to appreciate the past, because I know a lot of us get wrapped up in today, and we might just kind of look at things in our own prism from the time that we've started following something, but so we don't truly lose players like that and their influence to sit there and say, you might have heard about somebody one way or another. Go down a YouTube rabbit hole today and just kind of see what kind of player he was.
Yeah, incredible player. Couple of things. If you have a question, throw it in quickly, because I am on the Atlanta United official radio partner at 1120.
Local radio
with Andy and Randy. That's going to be a t-shirt. Coco, I think essentially they're doing what you're saying. It's not quite as simple as the way I think you're putting it. I'm talking about the club. Querétaro says that the club is at minimum guilty of gross negligence for the lack of security and police at one of the nastiest games on the league schedule. 100% agree. It says a 5-year ban from all FMF Liga MX competition would be a start for an actual punishment for Querétaro. Now, I think they punished them severely. I'm not going to go down the road that they didn't punish them enough. It would have been very disruptive to the entire league to just kick them out now. Yeah. I think they're doing it the right way, where they took the club away from the ownership group, which, I mean, when you talk about severity of punishments, that's like, no, we're taking your club away from you and you're banned for 5 years. And hey, you guys who sold it a while back, you guys got to go sell it, or they disappear. I think they're doing it in as well of a way as they can to punish, but also to not punish other people who had nothing to do with it. So I'm okay with the way that they went. There was another element that wasn't in the ESPN FC article that I was citing stuff from there just a minute ago, because it's been reported in a variety of places. I think that all of the people that they are identifying as perpetrators of the violence will be banned from all games in Mexico for life. That is another good thing that they're doing here. But I would be fine to ramp up the punishment if they banned these directors from working in director roles in Liga MX for life. Okay, that's fine. Your negligence got people hurt at a minimum. I'm very careful in the way that I'm choosing my language. I hope you guys understand that. I know there are reports, and I know there were social media reports, and I have seen the videos. I know what's out there. I can only say what has been officially said in terms of deaths. I know there's questions to that, and I'm bringing that up every single time. Right. But I am carefully choosing my language because I'm not there. I don't know. I can't say definitively either way. I can tell you that it was officially reported this, and there are disputes to it. So I'm being careful in that. But I'm also not sticking my head in the sand either and ignoring stuff. I want to make that clear. I'm trying to be professional in that regard on that. These directors are incredibly negligent, and they should be punished. And if you've punished them more severely, I'm good with that. I hate it for the good fans of Querétaro. I hate it for them because they don't deserve this, but there's no other way to do this correctly and handle it. they're probably not going to have a team very soon, because I don't think this team, when they get sold, I don't think they're playing in Querétaro. I think they're going to move. If it's Zacatepec, if it's to Cancun, where Atlante operated for a while, if it is to Quintana Roo, where Chiapas or Jaguares operated for a while. There are markets that don't have Liga MX right now that will probably try to get it. Don't be surprised if somebody, and I don't know where the ownership group stands for Leones Negros, don't be surprised if somebody like that tries to buy the rights and bump up, like we saw expansion happen in the past, or promotion relegation. Celaya has ambition to be a first division team again. I don't know if their ownership group can make it happen with this, but that's what they're building towards. Can they do it? I don't think this club is going to be in Querétaro after this current season. Can they get a deal done quickly enough to be in place for the Apertura in 2022? Hopefully. And it wouldn't surprise me if there's pressure to get that done as fast as possible. So I just don't think it's going to be in Querétaro. Atlante, Ricky, is in the Liga de Expansión, but they went back to Mexico City, if I'm not mistaken. They were historically a Mexico City club, and they moved to Cancun, and it was a massive failure. Massive failure. And they didn't last all that long out there. And I think this is why it's so hard to follow. I think officially they went out of business and they reconstituted as Atlante as a Liga de Expansión team in the second division. The other one would be Morelia, which the league allowed to go to Mazatlan. And they are in the Liga de Expansión. I believe they might be in the third division, but they have reconstituted themselves as a Atlético Morelia, I believe. Coco, I would hope that these Barras are not at games like the Leagues Cup. They would not be allowed to function as official supporters groups in Leagues Cup situations, that's for sure. Because, this ban, I would assume, would include that. But again, I don't think there's a team in Querétaro for them to be Barras of anymore. I don't think that happens after this season. So let's see where that goes, Coco. But I'm 99.9% sure that MLS is going to be very protective of the situation and not allow any of the people that were involved in this to be in their stadiums for Leagues Cup games. But I don't think Querétaro is playing in Leagues Cup. So, and they're not going to relocate to somewhere else to be a Barra Brava somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's where I think the club's going to do it. MLS will handle it. Don't worry. Also, and I saw there was a college basketball fight with players and fans last night.
Yeah, it was
it's horrible.
Yeah.
Like, you want to know why it happens more and more? Because it keeps getting publicity.
Yeah. Well, there were videos that were posted on Instagram of the fans of one team basically crowding around the team bus of, I guess, the visitors. And you've got, I don't know if they were fans or students or whatever, but you're seeing them flipping them off as they're walking off the bus in this real short runway to get into the arena. And the game ended up being a blowout. And it was like 40-point win for the home team. And you end up with this small group of visiting fans right behind the bench and surrounded by fans and students of the home team. And they were placed poorly in a volatile situation. And that happened. And I think it was a 25-minute delay in this championship game before they could clear everybody out. And I think they did the last 4 minutes of the game in an empty gym.
Yeah, well, hopefully next time those fans aren't at the game. This stuff's gotta be punished, because if you just allow it and it's like, look, it's March, it's intense. No, it's awful. It's bad. And what's going to happen is somebody is going to get punched, and you're going to have these things keep kicking up. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. We've got to figure this stuff out. Okay, last comments. Kevin, you get the last word, so I'll get your question if you can resend it. I know you highlighted it earlier, and we've got something on Georgia Storm we'll get to here in just a second. I totally agree, Bern. Celaya was a good little team, and I like what they were doing. They just added a bunch of pieces. Not all of them played in that match. Some of them might have played, but they didn't have numbers on their shirts, and they had little tiny ones on the front that I couldn't always see. But they have some connection with Peru. They had added a young former Peruvian youth international that I like the highlights on him a lot. They had a couple of veterans that were good. Celaya is building, and they were very I think, upfront about they want to be approved for potential promotion to Liga MX. I don't know if they have the money to go and buy the operating rights to Querétaro to jump that line, but they have big ambitions. Morelia also, and you mentioned Morelia is cool. A lot of Morelia fans here. Yeah, a lot of the kids that I coached back in the day with soccer in the streets in East Point College Park, whose parents or families or some of the kids were born in Mexico, a bunch of Morelia fans out of that group. Obviously, you had Chivas and America fans because they're the two big ones, but a lot of people from that region and a lot of Morelia fans. That was the club outside of the big ones that jumped up a lot. I was like, wow, okay, cool.
They're second in the Liga de Expansión, by the way.
Okay, cool. I thought they'd gotten back into Liga de Expansión. I couldn't remember it. Last one on Georgia Storm. Huge signing, Dutch striker Danny de Lorne this week. Led the Mid-South Conference, plays at Life, led them in goals, 13 goals in 15 games for Life. Good grief. Plays with Camden Chupa, who I like a lot, who I think is a future pro. Really good addition. I want to see how he plays at this level. Sometimes guys in college playing at the NPSL level, which can be a step up. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. You got to see how he fits. Having a teammate there is obviously going to be a big help. We are waiting on the NPSL schedule for this conference that will have Georgia Storm, that will have Georgia Revolution, that will have Apotheos from Kennesaw. Potentially we'll have Lemeño from Gainesville. I know that's been a little bit of a question. Could be a couple. There's a couple others from out of state as well, but looking forward to seeing that and figuring out a couple of games in the area that don't conflict with Atlanta United or Atlanta United 2, that maybe it's an SDH night out in Carrollton at West Georgia where the Storm are going to play, or down in McDonough where the Revs are going to play. Both teams in new facilities coming forward for the season. Nice upgrades for both as well. I want to see what Apotheos does. So you're going to have some local stuff to follow as well.
Yep. Southeast Conference this year in the NPSL is Apotheos, Appalachian FC, the Revs, the Storm, Atletico Lanier, and North Alabama SC.
There could be some other potential things. So stay tuned. Yeah. I don't know everything, but I know a couple things. We will see what it ends up looking like with that schedule. It should be announced really anytime. So really excited for that. I think Storm are going to play some preseason games with their local guys before all the college guys are available ahead of the start. Revs have Open Cup here in a couple of weeks out in Mississippi, and the winner of that will play the Birmingham Legion. You got USL Championship getting started this weekend. I'll have a preview of Atlanta United 2 on my Front Foot recording podcast series that'll be coming out this week ahead of the game in Louisville. We'll have a watch along for that on Saturday night. You got everybody getting started in USL Championship this week. You got USL League One, couple weeks away. Open Cup, it is ramping up fast. So we'll have plenty to talk about. Thanks for a Gambetta Wednesday, with whatever we're going to call this thing. Sometimes it's passing, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you guys know by now. Thanks for being part of it. We will get back with you tomorrow morning. We got stoppage time at 2:00 today. But tomorrow morning, 9:05, we'll have Will Pelagic in the first hour, play-by-play voice on radio for Charlotte FC. We'll have Nico Moreno at 10:30 to talk about Seattle, to talk CONCACAF, to talk MLS, all the things. And then we will be live in Kennesaw tomorrow night. So go ahead and make your plans. The Slutty Vegan food truck will be there. And I know John's afraid of it because anything talking about eating plants, he gets scared. They are amazing and blowing up all over the scene right now. So come out hungry, come out to talk some soccer. We will go deep into potential depth charts and lineups for Atlanta and Charlotte, and have some other conversations going as well. So we'll see you in Kennesaw tomorrow. We'll see you for stoppage time this afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow morning for SDH. Thanks for hanging out. Mucho platio.